Live with President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Join the conversation.
It is 3.5 minutes after 6. A very good evening to you and a warm welcome to our special broadcast here on 702 and Cape Talk. It is the exclusive interview with the President of the Republic of South Africa as well as the President of the governing party, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, who joins us here in the studio. Firstly, I've really just got to thank you very much for all of the emails that you've sent through, the messages on Twitter, etc., the questions for the President. And over the next 2 hours, we'll be going through all of those questions that you sent through to the President. But I suppose to underscore the importance of the discussion that is coming through with the President, I came across this article by political analyst Aubrey Machikwi, who wrote today that as we approach the end of another year in South African politics, there is no doubt that 2018 has so far been one of the most interesting years since the advent of democracy in 1994. In political terms, 2018 is a gift that never got tired of giving. It gave us the sadness of the death of Winnie Madikizela Mandela, shocking revelations about the true and the untrue nature of the state capture, the dance of corruption between the private sector and the state, political and economic uncertainty, the removal or resignation of Jacob Zuma as President of the Republic, the stuttering Zuma corruption trial, the VBS scandal, Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, resignation of Nhlanhla Nene as Finance Minister, resignation of Malusi Gigaba as the Home Affairs Minister, 2 cabinet reshuffles by President Cyril Ramaphosa, the Nugent Commission into SARS, the implosion of the Premier League, the implosion of the DA, sex, and more. That was Aubrey Machikwi just talking about the importance of this year in political terms. And of course, at the center of all of this, almost all of these, all the time, we go to the first citizen of the country to get answers about what is happening in our country, and he joins me in the studio now. Mr. President, it is a pleasure and an honor to have you in our studios. A very good evening to you.
Well, good evening, Xolani. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me start off by apologizing for not being able to come through on Tuesday. There were other matters of state that called. But I'm really glad to be here, to be having a conversation with you where you'll be answering all my questions.
Oh, thank you. Thanks indeed, Mr. President. We really, really appreciate your time. But I've got to start. I mean, obviously, this article by Aubrey Machikwi paints the picture of what has been happening this year. I just want to start off by saying, how has the job been? You took the job in February this year. Is it everything you thought it would be?
No. It is much more than what I thought it would be. Much harder, much more difficult, time-consuming, very tiring, exacting, and it just drains you and draws, every ounce of energy out of you. So it's much more than what I thought. It's almost like every day is wall to wall being busy from morning right until night time. But one does it for the service of the people of our country.
Sure.
So that's what one was called for, and one is doing it.
But how is it affecting your health? I mean, I think it was October where at some point you had to take some time off just to relax because you were exhausted.
Yes, it was part exhaustion, but also just a little infection. But I'm fine, back to good health and walking, and that helps because a little bit of walking and exercise restores one's energy. It's amazing what it does. It just gives you a lift and an oomph, and so one needs to keep doing that.
Certainly. It's interesting because in all the emails that I've been talking about, people are asking, for instance, let me read you this one from Dean Boshoff, who says, "Hi, XG. In the midst of all of the key issues, please ask the President how is he doing personally. One can just imagine the stress and the strain that he's under, and it has to be really hard keeping it all together in the manner he has."
Well, there is quite stress and strain. That's for sure. That's, I guess, given. It's a given for a job of a president of, I guess, any country, and much more so for us because we're still going through a transition. We've had 25 years of real change that has dramatically changed the face and the look of South Africa, but there's still so much more to be done.
Sure.
Much, much more for us to reach that apex point that our people want to get to.
Would you agree, though, with Aubrey that 2018 has so far been one of the most interesting years since the advent of democracy?
I would agree. It has been very, very interesting because we've had to deal with so many issues all coming at the same time, more or less. I mean, we've had to deal with the resignation of former President Jacob Zuma, and we've also had to deal with the state capture issues. We've had to deal with the commission and with the revelations coming through, week after week and day after day. And there have been quite a lot of
Have you been shocked by some of the revelations?
Yeah, some of them have been quite shocking, and some have come as a surprise that these things were happening. With some, one had, an idea, but you didn't really know and fully understand the depth of it. So the Zondo Commission is playing an important role for the country because it is taking us through a cathartic moment.
Sure. I wonder, were you surprised by the euphoria in the sense of optimism and the hope that greeted your election in December?
Yes, a bit, but I guess people were hopeful. They're expressing their hope for the South Africa that they yearned for, a South Africa which they felt was like slipping away from their grip, and a South Africa which was so clearly described by the Secretary General, Gwede Mantashe, then Secretary General, in his diagnostic report about how we had lost our way as the governing party and how we had allowed corruption to set in.
So the Ramaphoria, as it was then called, came as a surprise to you. But I'm just wondering whether that Ramaphoria, in your mind today, thinking about it, was it justified?
Well, in terms of people wanting to see a change and moving from what we had experienced in the past few years, yes, it was justified. I mean, hope springs eternal in the human heart. And so hope continues to spring eternal in the hearts of South Africans, and particularly when it comes to their confidence and faith in the ANC. Believe you me, many people still believe that the ANC is the only organization that can really keep this country together, the unity of our people, continue with the reconciliation process, and move forward with radically changing the architecture of our economy and empowering our people and delivering a better life for the majority of South Africans.
Sure, I hear you, Mr. President. You obviously are attributing that hope to the ANC, but actually it was Ramaphoria. The hope was in you as a person. So that's why I'm asking, if you look at it again, and is it justified that people were so hopeful that you will bring about this change, you will cleanse the ANC, you will cleanse the country, and you will take it forward?
Well, in that regard, I think you cannot separate me from the ANC. I am the ANC, I'm part of the ANC, and leaders of the ANC never project themselves as the key individuals in the broader scheme of the life of South Africa. It is, we are made, we are honed, we are molded by the African National Congress, and it is this ANC that has made all the leaders of the ANC, Mandela, Mbeki, and everyone else, including, Kgalema Motlanthe, Zuma, we have been molded and shaped by the ANC. So
I accept, Mr. President, except, of course, sorry to interrupt you, except, of course, that you, under your predecessor, there wasn't that hope until you were then elected in December. So the hope was about you. It wasn't so much about the ANC as it was about you.
Well, in part, yes. In part, it was, because what I guess I kept on articulating about this new dawn that we should move towards, this new beginning, this renewal process, and this unity of the African National Congress. So in part, yes, it is the articulations of the leader, the individual, but for the most part, it is, I am the repository of the African National Congress. The African National Congress is the vehicle. It is the calabash that holds what I have to say, what I am all about. And it is that I would like people to see as being their most important rather than just look at an individual.
Sure. And again, just to remind people of what the president is talking about, this new dawn, he spoke about it at his State of the Nation address, the first one in February, and take a listen to what he had to say.
We should honor Madiba by putting behind us the era of discord the era of disunity, and the era of disillusionment that had somehow engulfed our country. We should put behind us the era of diminishing trust in public institutions and weakened confidence in our country's public leaders. We should put all the negativity that has dogged our country behind us, because a new dawn is upon us, and a wonderful dawn has arrived.
So the president speaking in his maiden State of the Nation address in February this year. Now, I'd like to know whether you think that dawn is still there. And I'll tell you why I'm asking. I mean, I read an article in the UK Guardian. It was about a month or so ago. And the headline was, How South Africa's Ramaphosa Turned into Ramageddon. Firstly, do you agree that the Ramaphosa has turned into a Ramageddon?
No. I don't agree completely.
You disagree?
I disagree.
But let me tell you what the article then goes on to say.
Yeah.
It says, the dream of Nelson Mandela that South Africa would grow into a nation reconciled with its past, free of racial tension, and with growing wealth equitably shared, is absolutely in crisis, said William Gumede, the chair of Democracy Works Foundation, a South African think tank. The most immediate bad news has been economic. Forecasts put real economic growth at less than 1% this year. Unemployment, already very high, is rising, and inflation is hitting the poor people's budgets the hardest. The economy is supposed to be his strong point, but there is just no confidence. The story of the new dawn is just no longer credible, said Ralph Mateja, a political analyst and author. The story of the new dawn, Mr. President, is no longer credible.
Well, analysts watch certain moments in the history of a country. They latch onto a particular event, a moment, and then they make their conclusions. And I think the best is to use ordinary people in various constituencies as your barometer. And the barometer that I'm talking about with regard to, say, for instance, the economy, is what happened in our country recently when we called an investment conference. And we're able to get local businesses as well as offshore businesses who came together and said, we believe in this South Africa that is being renewed, this South Africa that is being rebuilt, reformed. We believe in it, and we are prepared to stake 290 billion rand to put into this country. And this was just a part of the money that I said we need to raise in the next 5 years, $100 billion, which is 1.4 trillion rand. And the other barometer is just ordinary people. Recently, just yesterday, the ANC was able to win a number of good constituencies from opposition parties. This very party that is pushing forward the message of hope, the message of a new dawn, the message of saying, let us look forward rather than look backwards, has been able to endear itself in the hearts and the minds of ordinary people. So, as we look around, we shouldn't just look at, for instance, the price of petrol has gone up and therefore the new dawn is over. Now the price of petrol has gone down. Does it mean that this new concept of a new dawn, a new beginning, a beginning of renewal is dead and finished? No. Many people in our country are feeling hopeful. I am feeling hopeful about the future of our country, and so do many ordinary people.
Sure.
And in doing so, people do not look just at a little moment there and say, a little thing that has gone wrong and say, that means that the whole country is now descending into Armageddon. No, that is a wrong approach. You need to look at the broader scheme of things.
Mr. President, I agree with you, and I need to take a break. I agree with you. Perhaps let's not look at the price of petrol, even though the cost of living, broadly speaking, has gone up.
Yes.
It has gone up.
Yes.
And so it's the ordinary people that are actually feeling the pain. The cost of living is up. Unemployment is up.
Yes.
Poverty, the rates are up.
Yes.
Inequality is up. So if you use those barometers and you say, well, the dream of the new dawn. Mr. President, before you respond, let me take a break and we'll take the answer in a moment. At 21 minutes after 6, you're still listening to our exclusive interview with President Cyril Ramaphosa, who joins me in the studio. And by the way, lots of your emails, and we'll reflect on them in a short while. So before we took a break, Mr. President, we were still looking at the barometers of the new dawn. And of course, the argument is that if you look at issues of unemployment, poverty, inequality, in fact, they're on the rise, some argue. So is it still a new dawn?
Well, we are having to deal with problems that have been given to rise by a whole number of factors, some of which have to do with the structure of our economy, and also things that have happened a number of years in the past. And if you can remember that, the structure of our economy is still trapped in the colonial and apartheid structuring idea, and that still traps us backwards. And we are seeking to break away from that, to get the majority of our people to be active participants in the economy. And that has led to the inequality that we have. It has led to the poverty that we have and the unemployment. So those are serious problems that we continue to deal with and to grapple with. Whilst that is a major issue that we need to address, we need to move on and address those issues. And that is why this year we achieved a phenomenal feat, in the sense that we got all the social partners to get together to agree on a job summit outcome, where they came up with more than 70 initiatives that we need to embark upon. And these were initiatives that were suggested by community organizations and members, by trade unions, by business and government themselves, without anything being imposed on them. And they said, through this, we will be able to increase job levels to a higher level. We've now signed and promulgated that the national minimum wage will commence. What is that going to do? It is going to reduce income inequality. There are 6 million workers in this country who are still earning way below the 3,500 rand. Now, when they begin to earn an amount which is above 3,500 rand, they are going to have more disposable income. And that is just the start, because that minimum wage is going to keep going up. And of course, we need to get to levels of a living wage. And when we get there, we will then be able to have more people having disposable income, and demand will then increase, because economic growth is really fueled by demand.
Sure.
Once people have cash in their back pockets, they're then able to buy goods and services, and that fuels demands, that gets the wheels of factories moving. And as part of that, in addressing these, we are now mobilizing for investments, because one of the problems that we have had in the past is investments have been slow. But we've also had state-owned enterprises having a knock on our economic growth. The way that the malfeasance and corruption had set itself in major state-owned enterprises has had an impact, because many of them are key drivers of our economy. So we've had to deal with a multiplicity of things, which are caused by a whole number of factors. And a combination of our strategies and the initiatives that we are taking are definitely going to start moving us forward. And we are focusing on youth unemployment. We've determined that we are going to create 1 million job opportunities for young people in the next 3 years. Now that work has started. We are opening pathways for young people to get into places of employment. We're opening pathways for women as well, because we want to have inclusive growth where all our people feel that this growth is there for them.
Sure. Mr. President, okay, I'm going to come back to, because you're raising a lot of issues like SOE is very important at this time, and also ideas about the economy. But I just want to go back a little bit again to the new dawn, and the dream of former President Nelson Mandela that I mentioned in the article that I read a little earlier on. So one of the big issues has always been about South Africanness, the country, the unity of the country. And other observers are saying, actually, what's happening is that more and more we're drifting apart as a country. Let me give you an example. Andile Mngxatama over the weekend of BLF, making that speech where he said that for every one black person killed, they will kill 5 white people. You kill one of us, we'll kill 5 of you. So that representing this fissure in society, that our society is, instead of coming together, that rainbowism is gone.
Well, you need to analyze what a person like Andile says and ask yourself whether it is representative of a huge number of people as a community that is saying that, or whether it is a lone voice out there in the wilderness. And sometimes we tend to look at these types of things and say, this is the general feeling of everyone. South Africans, by nature, even as we have gone through the most difficult history in our lives, where we black people were bludgeoned into submission and where they were oppressed, they have always extended a hand. And till today, we are saying, we are the ones, particularly as the African National Congress, we are saying the non-racialism project is still the best project in our country, where we build a nation from the ashes of racism, but also from the ashes of hatred, the ashes of intolerance. That is where we have a great opportunity to build a nation. And that is what Nelson Mandela advocated. And it is in those footsteps that we walk. But it's not only a Nelson Mandela dictum. It is what the African National stands for, that we need to have more tolerance. Our constitution has inscribed that in its pages. We need to have understanding. We need to be embracing one another. We cannot, through the hatred of some white people, then begin to define the whole white community as haters of black people. We need to be saying those who hate black people and those who are racist, we need to isolate them. We need to teach them the best ways of what a nation should be. And we are the ones who are at the forefront of leading that process. And we cannot as a nation be reduced to what, people who are full of hatred in their hearts are saying.
Mr. President, whether you look at the SABC, you look at Transnet, you look at Eskom, I suppose what's similar in all of them is this issue of corruption.
Yes.
And the extent of corruption is still unclear in our minds. And I would like you to perhaps just take us through this, because I was reading an article over the weekend quoting the Public Enterprises Minister, Pravin Gordhan. He said, he was speaking at the memorial service of struggle stalwart Lalu Chiba. He said, and I quote, "It's time now that we said a lot more loudly that 8 years of corruption, of mismanagement, of breaking the state and breaking key institutions of state is enough." Right? He goes on to say, we need a real cleanup. If I had more time, I'd tell of the rot we found at Dinel, at Eskom, SAA and Transnet. We have a little bit of time, President. Tell us about the rot.
Well, Minister Gordhan, as Minister of Public Enterprises, is at the rock face of all these issues. And as he oversees the various state-owned enterprises that he has to deal with. And by the way, let me say immediately that he's not the only one. There are other ministers who also have other state-owned enterprises that they deal with. Transport also has, and a number of others. And they are seeing a number of horrifying things where governance was, rules and traditions and practices were just trashed, completely ignored, where people decided to do as they wish. I mean, I'll give you a good example where, for instance, non-independent board members, non-executive board members, in a number of all these institutions, started acting as though they're executives, started acting as though they have a role to play in procurement. And that is when governance then breaks down. Because the executives who are employed full-time are then pushed to the side and no longer have any role to play. And in some cases where executives then, saw all this happening and then they started doing their own things and corruption then set in. And this is what we now need to root out. And the good thing is that we have been identifying people who are involved in this and rooting them out and getting them to leave so that we can clean up. Because these institutions do not belong to the executives or to the board members. They belong to the people of South Africa.
Sure.
So whatever we are doing at the behest and on behalf of the people of South Africa.
So the levels are horrifying.
It is horrifying in a number of these state-owned enterprises, but the real issue that we should be pleased about is that, one, we have seen what the rot is. Two, we are cleaning out the rot, and those people who are responsible are going
But they're pushing back, Mr. President.
Well, there are some who are pushing back,
So
but that
bad,
pushback, yes,
so bad
Yeah.
that the Auditor General
Yeah.
and his staff now need bodyguards to do
Yes.
their jobs.
Yeah,
That's
indeed.
Banana Republic stuff.
No, not yet Banana Republic stuff, because I have sat down with the Auditor General and he has told me horrifying stories. And we have said we are going to continue. And it is very pleasing that we have an Auditor General who is astute, but who is fearless, who is determined that we will root out corruption. And that is why we were able to move forward with the amendment of the Auditor General's Act in the way that we did, so that those who get involved in acts of corruption must know that in the end, whatever money is lost is going to be demanded from them. So, yes, Auditor General staff here and there have been threatened.
Yep,
and
even
we
shot at.
Yeah, even shot at, and we are saying that is going to come to an end, because we cannot allow that to happen. And we are beginning to see a wave of change. Look at what happened in the Limpopo province, where mayors and some councillors were involved. The governing party decided that we cannot be talking about a renewal. We cannot be talking about a new era, a new dawn in our country, where we're going to return to the values of the African National Congress and act with integrity, and continue to have people who are tarnishing the image of that governing party. So that is already a clear sign that, yes, we are going to have the courage, and this is the important part, we're going to have the courage and the determination to clean up, because it is when we clean up that we reposition the African National Congress as the leader of society, that people begin to say, yes, this is the African National Congress that we know and have always loved. The people of Limpopo, on hearing that, yes, this is what has been done, those people who were involved have been asked to leave, they said, it's a sigh of relief that this organization is going back to the values that we have always known that it stands for. So cleaning up is going to happen. Much as there's a pushback, much as there's a fight back, I can tell you, Xolani, that fight back and that pushback is never going to succeed. And those people who are trying to push back need to know very clearly our determination is resolute. We are determined that our country must be defined as a country that will get people who are in positions of power to do things correctly.
Some are fighting back through their own political parties.
Yes, well, I don't know about that, but we are going to make sure that South Africa is defined as a country that is corruption-free, a country where we do the right thing.
All right, Mr. President, I must thank you for now. I'm going to take the news because it's coming up to 7 o'clock. And of course, after that, what we will do is we'll go to the lines. 011-883-0702, 021-446-0567. We are talking to the President of the Republic of South Africa. When we're done with the news, it's your turn now. Let us know, what would you like to ask the President? It is 8 minutes now after 7. Very good evening indeed, and a warm welcome to our exclusive discussion. We're chatting to the President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. Again, Mr. President, we thank you very much for your time this evening. So a lot of you are calling in, and I'm going to go to the lines in a short while, but just need to wrap up one or two things with the President. I'm looking at the SMSs, Mr. President, and a lot of people quite impressed with the anti-corruption stance that you've taken. But here's a question. Is your cabinet built in your image? In other words, are these the people who, like you, are anti-corruption?
Yes, the cabinet is. They are all members of the African National Congress, and a number of them sit on the National Executive Committee of the ANC, and we are all bound together by the decisions of our movement, particularly the decisions that were taken at the 54th conference, which were very clear on the issue of corruption, that we've got to fight corruption and root out corruption, both in the party as well as in the state. So I can say, yes, very clearly, that collective of the cabinet is committed to root out
Are you
corruption.
proud of all of them?
Yes, of course I am.
Are they all your choice?
Well, there are a number of people. They're all my choice because those that I found having been appointed by President Zuma, I could have, let go. And everyone who's on that cabinet is a choice. that I
Is
have
Batabile
had.
Dlamini your choice? The minister, Batabile Dlamini?
Batabile Dlamini is a Minister of Women, and she is doing a good job in advancing the cause of women in our country. And she's really raised the bar and raising issues of how the country should start dealing with gender-based violence challenges that we face. And she is doing a fantastic job, particularly now in this 16 days of against violence against women and
But the
children.
Constitutional Court has had something to say about her conduct in relation to SASSA. And one of the things that you have said openly and in public is that we all have to abide by the Constitution. Are you still happy with her, even though the Constitutional Court found that, for instance, she has to pay from her own pocket because she conducted herself in an unbecoming manner around the SASSA situation?
This afternoon, I signed an affidavit in a case in which one of the political parties is taking me to court as president and arguing that I should dismiss the minister. So I've answered that charge that they've laid out in an affidavit, and the matter is now going to be heard in court. And I'd like that the arguments that will be put in court before the judges should be articulated and ventilated there. And in the end, the judges themselves will decide whether the approach that we are taking is a correct one or not.
So if you were unhappy with her, given the dynamics in the ANC, do you think that you can fire her if you want?
Yes, the President of the Republic has the right, and everyone who serves in the cabinet serves at the pleasure of the President.
I'm saying it because in your last reshuffle, in fact, our Clement Manyatela spoke to one member of the National Executive Committee and reported on this very radio station, that member saying, if you touch Batabile Dlamini, you will see flames. So there are people in the ANC who think that she's untouchable, or she's one of those who are untouchable. Do you feel empowered?
Well, as president of the ANC, president of the country, yes, I'm empowered. I have not seen any flames.
Well, because you haven't fired her.
I have not seen any flames anywhere in the African National Congress. And everyone who is appointed and removed from cabinet, they have to subscribe to the convention we have to be disciplined members of the African National Congress and know that they are deployed. And when you are deployed, sometimes you are not even given reasons why you are deployed or why you are removed. You just have to go with what the party and the leader, and in the end, the president tells you to do. And for instance, when I appoint ministers, I don't give them any reasons. When I remove them, I don't give them any reasons. So that is the done thing in our deployment processes.
The analysis, and this is what political analysts are saying, that the outcome of Nasrec was just too tight to give you enough political room to maneuver. For instance, let me take the deputy president. You publicly said that you would have preferred Naledi Pandor to be your deputy in the run-up to Nasrec. But because of the outcome, you end up with Didi Mabuza. So from us watching from outside, we think Didi was not your choice. Your choice was Naledi Pandor.
Well, I did actually go through that process. It was a moment of error on my part as a disciplined member of the African National Congress to even make that pronouncement at a public meeting about Naledi Pandor. And I did say that was an error because even as we were involved in a campaign, the choice really in the end is made by the members of the ANC.
Not you?
No, not me. And on my part, that was the error which I admitted to, which I will admit to this day, and in a very humble way, because we all make mistakes, and even as a leader, I did make that mistake. So in the end, the membership of the African National Congress meeting in conference then made certain choices.
Sure.
And those are choices that I can never say, oh no, I don't want this one. I don't want to work with this one. We don't work like that in the ANC. It is the membership that decides whether you are fit for a particular position or not, and if you are not fit, they leave you out. If they believe you are fit, they will put you in that position.
Speaking of mistakes, Mr. President, I want to talk about this issue of Bosasa and what happened there. So in Parliament, of course, you had the DA's Mmusi Maimane asking you a follow-up question about a donation that would have come through to you in your candidature towards the ANC's the presidency. Explain to us what happened.
Well, you see, earlier information had come forward, which my son shared with me, about an affidavit that had been drafted. And then I asked him, do you do business with this company? And he said, yes, I do business with them. And for me, that was the end and the beginning and the end of it. So when Mmusi Maimane raises it in Parliament, even though it was a completely new question, and the way in which he raised it, he was raising it suggesting that my son was corrupt. And then I gave an answer. I said, no, he has a contract with this company. But as it turned out, the contract also referred to a donation that had been given, and that donation, or an amount that had been paid. As it turned out, the amount that had been paid into a trust, an attorney's trust, and that attorney's trust was being utilized by the fundraisers of the campaign I was running, without my knowledge, without my even giving permission. They were in charge of that. So I had no knowledge whatsoever of that trust and the amount that went in there. So I answered the question honestly about the relationship that my son had with Bosasa, because it was based on a contract that he had told me that he had with the company. That his company, let me correct myself, that his company had with Bosasa. Later in the week, it was said that Bosasa said they don't have a contract with my son. And they're right. They don't have a contract with my son. They have a contract with his company. So when the information presentation request was made by Mmusi Maimane, it was information asking for a contract between Bosasa and my son. And the lawyers then said there is no such a contract, which is true. The contract is between his company and Bosasa. But be that as it may, I answered the question honestly, and there is just no corruption whatsoever in all this. All that there is that the donation was made to a campaign fund that I had no knowledge of, that I had no control of, and it was not paid to me, it was not paid to my trust or my family trust. And the people who were in charge of the campaign have later disclosed to me that you never knew and we never wanted you to know anyway, which is what often happens in these types of campaigns. The person who is the main principal never really gets to know where the money comes from and what it is about. So that is the explanation. And people are trying to peddle that there is corruption, that I'm corrupt and my son is corrupt. There is just no truth in all that.
All right, let's put your son aside and just specifically deal with this trust account then.
Yeah.
Because the question then becomes, how many other people would have donated to this trust account that you don't know about, who may or may not be corrupt?
Yes. And that's precisely the point. I don't know. And they have not disclosed to me, because what they said was, we don't want you to know because we are raising money. And there are some people that I met at dinners to talk to them and say, this is the type of campaign we're running. And thereafter, I would walk away and then they would give money. Now, they have decided that they are going to do an examination of the entire name a list of people who donated, and many of those people, as often happens in these things, were giving money on the understanding that it is a private donation that they are making. So they are now going to examine that to see whether any other types of monies came in and they are yet to give me the report. So in my own heart of hearts, I have no doubt whatsoever on my part, there's been no corruption about this. If there was, I would own up. Now, what I said in Parliament has been interpreted as me having lied. And as soon as I realized what the real truth was, I wrote to Parliament and I said, I actually gave incorrect information. And that is not the behavior of a liar, as far as I'm concerned, because I went forward and disclosed.
Because immediately, in fact, it was almost an hour after you said that in Parliament when your son on News 24 said, I did not receive any 500,000.
And he was right. He was right because he did not receive any money.
I suppose what was confusing is that the president had said that day that I saw the contract.
Yes, indeed. I saw the contract and it was not the affidavit because this was set out in the affidavit, this amount of money. The contract is separate. So I saw the contract. I did not see the affidavit.
Sure.
Yeah.
One last question on this issue. MKMVA, for instance, came up, I think it was about a month or two, and said that there are just a lot of ANC senior members who may be linked in one way or another with Bosasa, and maybe they should be, which is what Musimaimane, by the way, is calling for, a commission that includes Bosasa, because we've heard stories about Mr. Gwede Mantashe, whether true or untrue. We've heard stories about the Deputy Minister of Defense, Thabang Makwetla, and R1 million that he received. We've heard stories about Nomvula Mokonyane. We've heard stories about a lot of, and it includes Bosasa. What should happen?
Well, clearly, I mean, we need to examine all that. Now, a commission is being asked for. A commission is a really heavy-duty process that goes into a whole lot of legalities, and it costs a lot of money, like the Zondo Commission right now. It's heavy-duty, it costs a lot of money, it involves a lot of lawyers and all that. What we need to do is to examine all this. And I'm not saying it because there's been this whole story. I'm saying it as President of the Republic that we should never take things of appointing commissions very lightly, that, you know, when this happens, immediately you appoint a commission, because it is expensive and it is a very serious process. So one needs to apply oneself very, very carefully on that.
Maybe
So,
it should all go to Zondo Commission.
well, whatever, but it's something that needs to be examined.
Sure. Mr. President, let me take a break and I'm going to go to the lines. Lines just going mad, essentially. All right. We're going to go back to these issues of the ANC and the state of the ANC at the moment. But, President, if you don't mind, let's take some calls here. Let's start with Kondile in Mangaung. Kondile, hi. Baba, how are you?
I'm okay. No, Mongameli, President Matamela Ramaphosa.
Hello, Mfoit.
President, thanks, President. At least I must declare this in the public that next year, April, you'll be addressing the memorial lecture of Brown Fisher in Mangaung. Thanks for accepting, President.
Okay. Okay.
Let me quickly go to my question. I know that I've sent you an SMS, a text message on this matter, that as you deal with your lean cabinet, one of the critical things that I've looked into personally, being part of the local government, the public works and the local government or cooperative governance.
Yeah.
Yes.
For me, they do almost similar work. But for us to be able to do local government to work, the responsibilities of public works have to be located within corporate
Governance.
Governance.
Yes.
For one reason,
COGTA.
quickly. COGTA. Yeah. For one reason, if you look at issues related to land, if we are to expedite issues related to land as municipalities, as metros, and so, it becomes a very cumbersome process if you are to deal with that. But also, we have same buildings and everything of national government existing within local government, and that only makes it very easy for COGTA to be able to be operational. So I think that we will really assist them.
All right, Kondile, thank you very much. The President is going to respond to Kondile in a moment, but let me take Neo in Randburg. Neo, hi.
Good day, Xolani, and good evening to Mr. President.
Hi, go for it.
Mr. President, I think it's not even far-fetched to say, in fact, all state-owned entities have been involved in corruption one way or the other. Why is it that not all SOEs are being investigated? Now, I'm particularly referring to the one that falls under DMR, which is headed by Frene Ginwala. Why is it not touched? And it was under Naledi Pandor. I think for the fact that it was under Naledi Pandor, that should ring up the bells. He was a Gupta minister.
Okay, so just some clarity now. Are you saying that the entire department, or are you talking about a particular state-owned company?
I'm talking about Mintech, a state-owned company.
Okay, all right. Neo in Randburg, thank you very much. Let's go to Christopher in Midrand. Christopher, good evening.
Hello.
Hi, Christopher. Go for it, please, very briefly.
Hi, Mr. Xolani and Mr. President.
Yeah, go for it, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Mr. President that what are his plans about young people in South Africa? Yes, I've heard him ever since the interview started talking about the new dawn, but he hasn't touched much about young people in South Africa. So my question is based on young people in South Africa. What are his plans, especially going forward to the national election next year?
All right, Christopher in Midrand, thank you. Martin in Sentin, our last call in this batch. Okay, that call has dropped. Let's just get some answers from the president and we'll go back to the line. Starting with Gondile in Mangaung, President.
Well, thank you very much, Gondile. Thank you. Yes, it will be wonderful to do the Bram Fischer lecture in April next year. So let's keep your fingers crossed so that the diaries don't clash. But anyway, I'm really, really committed to being there. Mm-hmm. Now, coming to your suggestion about public works and COCTA being merged, I mean, I'm open to a number of ideas that people are putting on the table about how we should rationalize the state. And yours is one of those fresh ideas that I'd like to see how best we take into account. Other people have come up with a number of other ideas. And I can tell you that others had suggested that we should do exactly what we've done now, putting together or merging communications and telecommunications. We merged that and the heavens didn't fall in. And the one ministry now, which is unified, is going to synchronize everything that we were doing in the two departments and lead even to a much better execution, particularly of our spectrum issue project that we are working on, as well as the digital migration. So I'm grateful at Gondile for the suggestion. We will keep that in mind as we do the rationalization of the state. It's a very practical proposal. We will keep that in mind. Can
I just do a follow-up, if I may?
Yes, please.
Because I think it was around May when you said that there's a task team that's looking at this.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering about the numbers, whether you have a number in mind of how many departments. You're sitting at the moment with about 70 ministers and deputy ministers, which is massive.
Yes.
I mean, even a country like the US, which has 325 million people, has less ministries than what we have.
That's true.
So do you have a number? I mean, if you compare, for instance, to, I think, President, when Kgalema Motlanthe was the president, he had about 47, Thabo Mbeki had about 50. Do you have the number?
Well, it's evolving. The process is underway, and we are involved in a very good process where discussions of a very sort of intelligent and informative basis are taking place. And the type of practical suggestion that Gondile is putting forward is also evolving. So I am not yet sort of locked on numbers.
Okay.
I'm dealing much more with functionality and efficacy, whether the departments merged or reduced will be able to make sure that government processes are nimble, they are able to respond to the challenges that we face and deliver services. Coming to Neo.
Yeah.
Why are we... His approach is that many state-owned enterprises are corrupt. There's a lot of corruption rife there. And he says there's one that is not touched, that's the DMR, Department of Mineral Resources. Why is it not touched? And it specifically says Mintech. Now, Minister Mantashe is involved in a process where he is evaluating everything. The past 2 days he spent in a strategy session with his staff, looking at everything that's been happening in the department and what the department should look like going forward. And in the process, they're actually finding quite a lot of things that need to be corrected. and they are also dealing with people who may or may not have done wrong things. So that is underway. And maybe now it's not in the headlines in a big way because they are slightly smaller, but also in a very, very important department, which is DMR. So we will continue seeing a restructuring and a repositioning. So maybe keep your eye on that. Now, coming to Christopher, what are our plans for young people? Christopher, we have lots of plans for young people. Many of the people who are unemployed today are young people, and that is a great concern to us. And the majority people who live in our country, the 58 million people who live in our country, the majority of them are young people.
Yeah.
And we need to come up with a clear strategy of what we are going to do to create pathways for these young people. Now, many of the projects and initiatives that we are embarking upon are aimed at creating opportunities for young people. In agriculture, we're finding that a lot of young people are being drawn back into agriculture. They are being drawn into the land issue. We're going to be opening agricultural colleges so that they can go into colleges. We want young people who are getting skills as they come out of universities and community colleges and TVET colleges to be young people who will get jobs. Now, one of the things that we are going to test drive, if you like, is to do the German system where young people get into into colleges and do theoretical work. At the same time, almost in the same year, 6 months of theory, 6 months of practical, where immediately as they do practical work, they're then introduced to the world of work, and the following year they go back to doing the theoretical, and then the other portion of the year they go back to doing practical. And through that, they then get well-versed in the world of work, they get skills, and if they don't get a job with that company, they will then have opportunities to get jobs with others. Now, the Yes campaign that we've launched, Youth Employment Service, which as I spoke about earlier, that will take up to 1 million young people into employment opportunities, is aimed at that. Now, the term might look like this is really temporary stuff, but the skills that they are going to learn and the pathways that will be open to them will lead to them getting jobs. Now, we already have close on to 100,000 young people since the project started just about 8 weeks ago, who are now involved in this program. And already, in a very wonderful way, we're finding that a number of them are already seeing that they can get jobs in those types of companies. And we've called upon the private sector, and we are going to continue calling upon them to create opportunities for young people. So, Christopher, the training will continue through our TVET colleges, our universities, and we want the orientation and the focus of young people to move more and more towards doing technical work, where they don't just go and want to, get these high-flying degrees in, BA and so forth, where they go and do real technical work and not be shy to become plumbers, to become smiths people who work with steel and so forth. And Christopher, I went to 2 factories recently, and it was a joy for me to see young people who are technically trained displaying their skills. And a number of them young women who are now engineers of one sort or another, or technicians of one sort or another, having had NSFAS to start with, a bursary, having had an opportunity to go to a university or technicon or TVET college, as we call them, and having had the opportunity to learn and then going into the private sector, into these factories.
Yep.
So those are the opportunities. And now, lastly, I want our young people to be made ready for the 4th Industrial Revolution. I want them to be active participants in the 4th Industrial Revolution. And my dream is to have a Silicon Valley type of situation in our country where we can create It could even be a city, Christopher, a new city, which is a Silicon Valley type, where young people can go and be trained, display their skills, start their own businesses, and get up and going and contribute to the growth of this country. That is the dream that I have for our young people.
And a lot of young people are calling. Let me go to Sihle Ofimvaba. Sihle, hi.
Oh, hi, XJ.
Hi, thank you for calling. Go for it, please.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. President, as well. I would like to ask Mr. President about the job summit that we had
recently.
Yes. There were no young people that were represented. Why? To the point that it was only old people that were in the job summit. So why were the young people not represented in the job summit? Because that led to the 702 and Cape Talk job summit to have its own for the youth.
Yeah. Okay, Sihle in Ofimvaba. Thank you. The President will respond shortly. Tebucho is in Midrand. Hi, Tebucho.
Hi, XG. Hi, and Honorable President. Good evening.
Hi.
Hi. Mr. President and XG, I'm calling as a civil servant myself. We work on the ground on a daily basis with an organization called the National Skills Fund. We empower and we teach skills development throughout the country. Now, one of the things that I've picked up, XG, with our youth is that they feel like they can't influence government decisions, right? Mm-hmm. Because South Africans always listen to what they want to hear, right? So now what happens is that when people get empowered in the middle class, we move out of our townships. So we leave those ones and they get excluded. Mm. So then what happens is that we don't have a strategy to go back and find those that are excluded, and the onus being on us, the privilege to go and educate the uneducated. Sure. So, Mr. XG and our president, I have this very small plan that I've been drafting.
Very briefly, please.
With a friend of mine that I would like to share with the president himself. It's a very comprehensive plan. It is about participatory budgeting within the youth. Information centers around the youth in changing complexities and the changing times. How do we as politicians relate to such complexity?
Okay.
Wonderful.
All right, so that's Tebucho. Maybe Tebucho, just email it to me and I'll try and find a way, perhaps of sending it to Zizi Godwa, who is the head of the presidency at ANC, and then he can pass it on to the president. I think that's because it may very well be a very, as you say, comprehensive plan, big document. I'll send it to Zizi Godwa and it will go to the president. That's Tebucho. A quick call from Sunduza in Johannesburg. Hi, Sunduza.
Hi, yeah, it's Sunduza Mwana. I'm calling you from here, Johannesburg, but I'm from Guyana.
Okay, go for it, please.
So I want to know, when is Mr. President visiting our place at Guyana? Because we have a crisis of water. As I heard that Mr. Mbowin said that Mr. President will come to Guyana to finalize the issue of water. Because we are drinking water there with the domestic animals. It's painful for us. Even right now we are heading to homes. It's going to be difficult for us,
Yeah,
so I want to know when Mr. President is coming at Guyana.
Okay, Sunduza in Johannesburg, thank you. Fernando is in Germiston. Hi, very briefly, good evening. Hi, Fernando.
I am Xolani. Thanks for the show. I am Mr. President.
Good evening.
I just want to ask him, all these years of all this malfeasance, why hasn't anybody gone to jail?
All right, interesting question. Okay, maybe let's start with Fernando, if we may, Mr. President, just in answering all of these questions.
Well, Fernando, the obvious thing we have to do is to follow due process. I am strong on process and believe that it is when you follow process that you are able to have the best outcome, which is unquestionable, which everybody knows that they can accept and subscribe to. So if we are a country that is governed by rule of law, that's what we should do. Now, all these things will happen in due time. And I've always said that those who have done wrong, if you have done wrong, you must accept that you must be accountable. And accountability means that there must be consequences. And that is something that we should never be afraid of. If I have done anything wrong, I should know that, yes, there will be a comeback. Now, the Zondo Commission is underway. As the Zondo Commission goes through whatever it is going through, it is going to come up with recommendations. But similarly, those who are in charge of the criminal justice system are following everything that is being done. They are busy with their own investigations. And I know that we are impatient. I know that we want to see everything having happened yesterday. But my dear brother Fernando, all things will happen at the right time. I think that is what we should have confidence in. And this time round, we should not fear that those who have done wrong will just get away with whatever wrong that they have done. Due process of the law will make sure that there is accountability.
Okay. If we may just go back then to the question about when you visited Giyani.
Sunduza, yes. So my brother Sunduza, I had wanted to come to Giyani a few weeks ago, and the reports that are still being put together are being put together, because when I do come there, I'd like us to look at practically the things that have happened there, what has gone wrong. And I would now like to come. I had wanted to come before the year ended, but I would now only be able to come in the new year, and will announce the date. It'll either be in January or in February. But definitely I am coming to Giyani. I am concerned about those 85 or 88 villages that do not have water, proper water. That pains me a great deal. And in a number of ways, as I've been driving around there, I've seen the pipes lying on the ground from the Nandoni Dam, and I've often asked, why are these pipes not in the soil so that they can deliver water from the Nandoni Dam into the Giyani area? So I'm seeking answers, and I'm going to get answers, and it's going to be a tough and difficult process that people will have to go through, as they have to be answerable to some of the things that have not gone well, as to be able to give our people water and a better life in that area. Coming back to Tebogo.
Yeah.
Tebogo, yes, as Xolani said, I would welcome your email. I really would welcome the presentation. I find it very, very interesting to hear the concept of participatory budgeting among the youth. I like that. And yes, I would like more and more young people to feel that they can influence what we do in government. And this is what, I'm saying South Africans should have a sense of. Our people should never have a sense that what they're asked to comment on or what they're asked to participate in has no impact or no influence. I do want young people to have an influence, and it is for this reason that we are going to be announcing in the new year. We're going to be in fact we are announcing it soon. The youth council, the presidential youth council, that should have been announced already because cabinet approved it. The names will be finalized and settled. So that council is the one that is going to be working closely with us. Getting back to Sihle, at the Job Summit, we had the National Youth Development Agency participating. There may not have been a plethora of young people, but I know for a fact that the one person who represented communities there is a young person who used to be part of the National Youth Development Agency. Tulani is a young person. He spoke for young people. When he stood at the Job Summit, he was talking about the challenges that young people are going through. And clearly, when this Presidential Youth Council gets underway, it is going to be focusing more on jobs, and we are going to have many young people in that type of meeting or council, and they will be able to articulate the concerns, the issues, and the aspirations of young people. Young people is one of our main preoccupations, Sihle. We will not depart from that because it is young people who are the future of our country, and we want to empower them.
I just want to pick up, and you mentioned this a little earlier on, Mr. President. You spoke about that gender summit.
Yes.
Some of the stories that came out of the gender summit were heartbreaking. In fact, there is the video of that lady who essentially just took off her clothes in front of you, and there's your reaction there. Just, what was going through your mind?
Oh, what was going through my mind was two things, really. The pain that the women in our country have to go through is just horrendous. It is horrendous, and it is demeaning to see the majority people who make up our population being treated by men who claim to love them in the way that those women were describing. It tore my heart apart to hear her story and the stories of other women. And as she told her story and then started undressing, it was a sight I did not want to see. I did not want to see. Yes, I wanted to hear it, but I did not want to countenance the horror of it all, because what she was displaying was the horror that this abuse had wreaked on her body. And I just was too maybe timid, too cowardly to be able to countenance that.
And the issue is she was let down at different levels. So, of course, the first one is just the violence, sheer violence of rape.
Yes.
But the second one is policing work around it. And the third one is hospitals, because apparently when she was operated on, some stuff was left inside. And I really want to pick up on this one, because I spent most of this year in and out of hospitals myself with my health issues.
Yes.
And the issue is that the health sector, public healthcare sector in particular, is near collapse, Mr. President.
Yes. Yes, we're very much aware of that. I am very much aware of the crisis that we're facing in our health sector. I've been to hospitals and I've seen it myself, and I've seen the horror story playing itself out. I went to Tembisa Hospital. I went to the antenatal, or it is the department where the premature
babies,
children have been born, and there were so many of them in a small little ward, and there were so many that the fear of diseases spreading out there, the fear of anything going wrong was just too big. And I realized that this is truly a crisis. Our hospitals are in need of proper infrastructure, but more importantly, they are in need of basic things such as beds, sheets, and all that. But they are also in need of doctors and nurses who are truly committed to their craft and to their profession. And it is to this end that we decided that we are, through the stimulus package, going to be able to put money aside to employ doctors and nurses, and immediately go and buy beds and hospital linen, so that our people can be sick. As if they are sick, they could be sick in a decent place, and the dignity should be restored. But at the same time, the National Health Insurance, which we are finalizing, is going to be one of the solutions that we have, so that in the end, all of us as South Africans are able to act in solidarity with one another, so that people who are healthy should be able to help and subsidize the sick. The young must be able to subsidize the old. And those who are rich should be able to subsidize the poor.
Yeah.
And those who are in rural areas should also be subsidized by people in urban areas. This is what happens in many other countries around the world, and this is the direction that we are
Of course, the
taking.
private sector in South Africa is resisting that. But I quickly want to move on, because we're coming to the ANC now.
Yes, sir.
I mean, when you were elected, of course, you spoke about unity right at the beginning. That's one of the most important mandate that you've been given by a conference in Nasrec.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether you think now that the ANC is united. I mean, we've heard so much this year. We've heard stories of plots. In fact, we've had your own Secretary General, and just to give you one story in particular, going to one region, it was the Moses Mabhida region, and saying to the ANC Youth League there that, comrades, it's only 5 years. Only after, we'll go and work hard. After 5 years, we'll have the ANC that we want. He is the same Secretary General of the ANC that is found in a hotel in what it was reported as a plot to oust you. But also, this weekend, we learned that the very region that he visited I think it is 78 out of 88 branches, are refusing to cooperate and work in the ANC's election program. I'm just wondering if this is a coincidence, or is this the result then of that plotting that took place at the Maharani?
No, you cannot make such a sweeping statement. Unity is a process, and it was never going to be an overnight event or success story, particularly after we went through a very divisive conference like we had. We therefore have had to take very careful steps to unite the African National Congress. And you could say that, maybe I'm lucky that I was given a very clear mandate as president: unity and renewal. And those two concepts are what is going to define the future of the ANC. And right now, we are in the process of uniting the African National Congress. It's been, yes, a bumpy ride, but we are smoothing out the bumps from province to province. The provinces that you would have thought, are fraught with disunity are now becoming united. They are beginning to gel, because largely our comrades have realized that there is no other option other than unity. Beyond unity, there is just chaos. There is just total disaster. There is even loss of votes. There's even loss of confidence by the people of our country, because people don't want to see a divided African National Congress. They want to see a united ANC. So many people are now realizing that, hey, there is just no other choice. Unity is the only game that we should be playing in town. And also renewal. Renewal in the sense of adhering to the values of the African National Congress. That is why you see what happened in Limpopo, where they've said, yes, if you were involved in malfeasance around VBS, you just have to step aside. You have to step aside. That is the renewal process of the African National Congress. It is on that pillar that we are also going to be able to build unity. And people are now going to realize, and as they are, that it is through working together, through renewing ourselves as the African National Congress, ridding ourselves of all those bad practices and factionalism that leads to the disunity, that we will be able to build a stronger ANC. We are on the way and the path of building unity in the African National Congress.
But it's been difficult because, for the ANC's special NEC to sit and say in the end that we are banning secret meetings, which is what you decided at that special NEC meeting, may on its own create suspicion. So if you see Zizigodwa going into a hotel and soon is followed by Fikile Mbalula, it's like, oh, is that a secret meeting again?
No, on the contrary. What that decision did was to say, comrades, let's be transparent. Let us be open. Let us not do things in dark corners and hidden corners. If you are going to meet so and so, be open. So it must be known. It must be known that I am going to meet so and so that people must never have any suspicions, because it is when you don't declare that people have suspicions. Now, already many people are coming forward and declaring. I had the Secretary General the other day saying to me, President, I've met so and so, and this is what we discussed. And I said to him, SG, I met so and so, and this is what we discussed. So the transparency is just becoming a wonderful phenomenon in the ANC. And what that does, it engenders, it promotes the unity that we want to see. The ANC, yes, has had a bit of a rough bump, but right now, if you look at all our structures, people are embracing one another. They're uniting around a common theme of renewal and unity. And of course, as we go towards elections, you will see the African National Congress family coalescing and closing ranks and getting together so that we can go to the nation as a united bloc. that is able to lead society.
Sure. But what may be a problem, and it is in other regions, is the lists process that is going on right now. In fact, I saw a report that there was a fight in one of the regions, etc. It's interesting because I think the ANC, it may have been in Mangaung where the ANC decided, it was the veterans actually that suggested that actually we should do away with the list process. That simply because with the lists, it's more about the party. It's not about the capacity of an individual that we send to parliament. Maybe it should be constituency-based instead of putting together this list. When is the ANC going to implement that?
Well, the constituency-based issue has been in discussion for a while, and we are reflecting on it because in the end, there is merit in a constituency-based type of dispensation. But similarly, there's also merit in a party representation, proportional representation system, because we've got a number of parties in our country. And what we sought to do in 1994 was to make everyone be represented so that you do not have first past the post, so that if you've passed the post, then everybody else is a loser. We wanted everyone to be a winner, everyone to participate in building the democracy that we have today. So that has held together. 25 years later, we've got some number of parties, is it 13 or so, in our parliament, and they're all making a contribution. We pay heed to a number of things that they say in the parliament. So in the end, we also, as the African National Congress, need to look at the efficacy of our list process and our selection process. We are beginning to say we want people who are really good, who are going to make a contribution to the development of our country, who are going to represent the people of South Africa, because it is the people of South Africa who vote for the African National Congress. We only have 1 million members. Last time we were supported by some 11 million voters, meaning that people have confidence in us, so we represent them as a collective.
That's an interesting point, perhaps, just to reflect on, because the issue has been here in Gauteng. I mean, in 2009, I think the percentage was over 60%. That's how much the ANC won. It was 66, I think. But 2014, that number went down to 54, 55. And if you look at some of the polling that's going on, some are suggesting that the ANC may actually get less than 50% here in Gauteng.
Well, I'm confident that we will not get below 50%. And in fact, we are going to even top the 2014 numbers and even go way beyond. The ANC is renewing itself. Some of the reasons why people sort of walked away from the ANC was what we were going through as the African National Congress. And they can see that we are in the process of renewal. And renewal is something that people love because they say they're renewing themselves, they're becoming new shape, new image and new values. They're embracing them. We will go back to them. So I expect the majority of South Africans to come back to the African National Congress, their natural home, because this is the home. The ANC has always been the parliament of the people of South Africa, and we are going to demonstrate once again that we are indeed that parliament of the people of South Africa.
Just one final question. The Concord this morning, this is the court deciding that former President Jacob Zuma must pay his legal costs and that it overturns the decision of the presidency as well as the Attorney General. So what is your comment?
Well, I'm going to study the judgment. I haven't studied it. I've just seen the headlines. We need to study it very closely. And in the end, the court has made the decision, and we need to look at the reasons why they made the decision. And so that's what one can say about it at the moment. Yeah.
And any plans for the festive season?
Well, a little bit of rest.
A
little bit of rest. I think I would encourage all South Africans to take time off, to go and rest, because this has been a really busy year for many people, and to a smaller extent myself. So I'll want to go and rest and be with family And I wish everyone...
And watch those beautiful Ankole.
Be amongst the cattle and be a cattle farmer and relax a little bit. Yes, thank you very much. And have some cow dung on my boots, so yes. that'll be wonderful.
Mr. President, I've really got to thank you very much for coming through and spending time with us. And also just tell you that so many emails came through and we reflected them in obviously the discussion that we have had this evening. We really, really thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Xolani.
Much
pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, then. Thank you very much, the President of the Republic of South Africa, spending 2 full hours with us. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you for listening. Thank you for all of the calls. Thank you for the emails. I may not have read them, but actually they were part of the questions that we asked the President. They gave us so much insight into some of the things that make people that people want to talk about in as far as South Africa is concerned. Thank you for listening. We're back tomorrow with the usual. Of course, I'll be on the show between 12 and 1 o'clock. Cheers. Have a very good evening.